All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
There it is. Hey, good morning, everyone. It is the Mark Thompson Show. Mark Thompson traveling today, but Tony's here. Hey, Tony. I'm here.
There we go.
There it is. There's the music. It doesn't feel right unless we have the music to go.
I know.
Oh, man. You know what I saw before we even came on the air? Do we call it on the air if it's YouTube?
Yeah, close enough.
Spencer Jaffe throwing in a $2 super sticker right off the bat. So thank you. This show is crowdfunded, and we appreciate every single contribution that rolls into the Mark Thompson Show. So Spencer, thanks for getting us started. Much appreciated. You can find our information at themarkthompsonshow.com, themarkthompsonshow.com. That's where the Patreon and the PayPal links live. And of course, as you saw Spencer starting it, the super chats and super stickers are ready. We have a great show coming up because it's David Cay Johnston Day. So he will be along at around noon. Jefferson Graham is going to talk about the new iPhone, and if you're trying to get a hold of one, the best way is to do that along with other tech stories. And then Mark has a great interview that he's left us with the former executive director for the Republican Party. His name is Jamie Miller. He's now a political consultant. And Mark has a great interview where they talk about different issues, and they may not agree, but it's going to be a really good time. So I welcome a dissenting opinion here on the Mark Thompson Show. Why not, right? Good morning to you. Thanks for being here. The first story that I have to talk to you about is a humdinger, because you've heard Donald Trump say repeatedly, Project 2025, what's that? That's not my thing. I don't know what they're doing, but I'm not attached to that, right? Oh, really? Well, it turns out he seems to be a little more attached to it than he is admitting. And we kind of already knew this, but now there's video evidence to back it up. I'm telling you, it's like they don't realize he doesn't realize that he's taped. Everything he says is taped. It's all out there. Well, this video is surfaced of Trump giving a speech at the Heritage Foundation where he talks about the fact that they're laying the groundwork, that they're making the plans, and that all of this is going to happen when he says the American people give him the biggest mandate, blah, 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 blah. So he's a little more connected to it than originally thought. Let's roll the video, Tony.
Our country is going to hell. The critical job of institutions such as Heritage is to lay the groundwork, and Heritage does such an incredible job at that. This is a great group, and they're going to lay the groundwork and detail plans for exactly what our movement will do and what your movement will do when the American people give us a colossal mandate to save America. And that's coming. That's coming.
Oh, really? So you knew about it, you're in favor of the plans, and when the American people, quote, give you the biggest mandate, you're ready to go get it? Because that's not what you've been saying, Trump. So here's the thing for me. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, but it's if you are lying like this, what else are you lying about? Right? I mean, this should be obvious. It should be obvious to people. Now, maybe Trump supporters have known the whole time they're in support of Project 2025 and they don't care, right? But for people who really believe him, who have heard him say recently, oh, I don't know about Project 2025. That's, shuffling it aside. That's not me. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. We'll talk to David Cay Johnston about this in a little while when he comes in, but man, I think that getting caught in a lie like that looks really, really bad. Can we talk about the Trump, I'll call it an apparent assassination attempt, although I think a guy sticking a gun through the golf course fence 400 to 500 yards away from the former president, that's a little more than an attempt, even though no shots were fired off by the would-be assassin. But there is a way that the GOP, that the Trump campaign is handling this, that it's a way for them to keep it focused on the issues. It's ugly, but it kind of works. So the strategy is to blame the Democrats, right? Well, it's the Democrats' rhetoric. It's the Democrats saying that Trump is trying to damage the Constitution. True in my book. It's the Democrats saying things that are riling up people, that are getting them so violent. Okay. There's was a stakeholders call on Monday, the day following the incident at the golf club, where advisors addressed the apparent attempted assassination before they moved on to looking at the poll numbers. And according to a person who took part and spoke to Politico, they talked about the reality that we are in, or they are in, and they said this is the new reality of American politics. They said the threats to Trump's life, mean the campaign is going to be talking about whether or not he's going to be shot next week, and he said that means they're not going to be talking about the issues. And so in order to circle back and focus on the issues, blame the Democrats and their issues for the attack. It's really smart as far as a campaign strategy, because that's exactly what it did. The thing that they're forgetting, and I think the American people are smarter than this, is when you talk about campaign rhetoric inspiring violence, let's take a look at January 6th, right? And what about their own rhetoric and Trump's lies and anger against immigrants and filthy, dirty mouth and calling people names? What about that inspiring the violence against him? I mean, hate to blame the victim, but if you're going to start throwing around blame as a strategy, then I think you have to be willing to accept the blame as well. Yeah. Oh, look at this. It's our favorite McAllister. Lucy McAllister with a $10 super sticker. Lucy, thank you so much. I love your last name. You're missing a C, but I'm going to forgive it. I will forgive it. Thank you for the $10 super sticker. We really appreciate it here on the Mark Thompson Show. So this whole blame thing, when you hear them blame Democratic rhetoric for somehow inciting violence, no, that's a strategy. That is something that Republicans are specifically doing to keep the issues front and center, to keep the issues they want to hammer on front and center. The Democratic rhetoric is not responsible for Trump's apparent alleged assassination attempt, or whatever they're calling it. No, that's not true at all. It's a strategy to get you to think about the issues. Just note. Meanwhile, let's talk about the suspect in this case. There's a story that Mark sent me last night, and this is wild. This is an interview with a man, the suspect from Hawaii, right? Lived in Hawaii. The interview is with a man who was the daily pickleball partner of the alleged gunman. The article says, before Ryan Wesley Routh allegedly became the second man to try to kill Donald Trump in as many months, he was a fiend on the pickleball court. Brian Schultz saying he was a reasonably good player. He played really hard. He was the only one on the courts who would dive for the ball. Most pickleball players don't dive to make the shot. This man from Kaneohe, Hawaii, on Oahu, says he frequently played with Routh over a period of several years as part of a loose group of residents who showed up at the beach park 3 mornings a week to get their pickleball on. He says Routh was always personable and good-natured, chatty, on friendly terms with the regulars, hard on himself when he made mistakes, never chastised his partners though, just his own errors, and he was the most mild-mannered player out there. It turns out that during this whole playing pickleball thing, he would be taking trips and writing letters and doing the craziest things. So, you expect someone who's writing letters to world leaders, who wrote a book, a 291-page book calling for Trump's assassination, criticizing Trump for his 2018 withdrawal from the Iran nuclear deal, writing in the book about Iran, you're free to assassinate Trump as well? What? And this is the most mild-mannered guy on the pickleball court. Wow. That is just crazy. This man reportedly flew to Ukraine to try to fight for them, but they said he was too old and probably maybe came off in a way that was odd. So he's there in Ukraine trying to recruit people and eventually comes home and comes right back to the pickleball court in Hawaii. This is wild. Now, it's been said that he's a Democrat, but from reporting that we are hearing now, he's a really scattered political history. He was registered as unaffiliated in 2012. He said in his book that he wrote, he's tired of people asking if he's a Democrat or Republican. He said, I refuse to be put in a category. I must always answer independent. He had supported Bernie Sanders, Tulsi Gabbard, President Biden, and Trump, who he disavowed in 2020. He said, I and the world hoped President Trump would be a different and better than the candidate, but we were all greatly disappointed, and it seems you're getting worse and devolving. And he wrote, I'll be glad when you're gone. I wonder why someone who writes a book like this, who flies to Ukraine, who's writing these incendiary letters, wasn't on more of a radar. You know, we joke when you say something, negative about whatever, that your phone is going to hear you, that the NSA is going to knock on your door, whatever. This one seems so obvious. How many people are there out there like this that are a little bit crazy? And they seem to be, either on both sides or straddling the middle, maybe not really knowing which way they're going. I don't know. So he goes to the Ukraine, as mentioned, and he's turned down by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. He said his initial goal was to go fight, but he's 56 and he has no military experience, so they told him he wasn't an ideal candidate. But thanks for coming all the way to Ukraine. So he goes to Kyiv and he's going to promote getting more people to America or to Ukraine's International Legion. Several foreign soldiers involved with the Legion told Slate that Routh was not associated with them, that he recruited nobody to the cause. He did very little during his time in Ukraine, except everyone kind of knew, he got a little publicity there. And after his failed attempts to recruit anyone for the Ukraine International Legion, he comes back to Hawaii and he takes up pickleball again. Like nothing ever happened. I'm telling you, that's weird. And so the man that plays pickleball with him said he was around for 4 or 5 weeks before the alleged assassination attempt, or apparent assassination attempt, and he said nothing seemed out of the ordinary, just another day on the pickleball court, like nothing ever happened. Is that the weirdest thing? Wow. I'm telling you. In Springfield, Ohio, they've now called out the state troopers to help patrol schools because of so many threats here. And I don't know if we've run this video on the show, but I think it's really important. If you haven't seen it, it's a video of Dana Bash on CNN interviewing J.D. Vance, where he says if he has to make up a story to get the media's attention, that's what he will do. And when Dana Bash asks him repeatedly, well, what about the people of this town? First of all, you're scaring immigrants that are here legally. You're inspiring threats to come in against schools, against hospitals, wreaking havoc on this town by what you've done in inventing this story. And J.D. Vance has no shame. Let's look at the video, Tony.
Dana, the evidence is the first-hand account of my constituents who are telling me that this happened. And by the way, I've been trying to talk about the problems in Springfield for months, and the American media ignored it. There was a congressional hearing just last week of angel moms who lost children because Kamala Harris let criminal migrants into this country who then murdered their children. The American media totally ignored this stuff until Donald Trump and I started talking about cat memes. If I have to,
But it
if
wasn't
I have
just a
to
meme,
create stories so that the American media actually pays attention to the suffering of the American people, then that's what I'm going to do, Dana, because you guys are completely letting Kamala Harris coast. You had one interview with her. You talk about pushing back against me, Dana. You didn't push back against the fact that she cast the deciding vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which is why a lot of Americans can't afford food and housing.
You just said
We
that
ought
you're
to be
creating
talking
a
about
story.
public policy.
Sorry, you just said that you're
Pause.
creating the story.
What's that, Dana?
You just said that this is a story that you
Yes.
created. So the eating dogs and cats thing is not accurate.
Dana, it comes from firsthand accounts from my constituents. I say that we're creating a story, meaning we're creating the American media focusing on it. I didn't create 20,000 illegal migrants coming into Springfield thanks to Kamala Harris's policies. Her policies did that, but yes, we created the actual focus that allowed the American media to talk about this story and the suffering caused by Kamala Harris's policies.
Bad boys.
What? I mean, what? So he says we drummed up the focus on this. He says a lot of other things in this interview, and it's pretty contentious back and forth between he and Dana Bash. But I'm telling you, once again, just like we started off talking about, if you're going to lie to me about this, what else are you going to lie to me about? One constituent call. And Dana Bash goes on to say, listen, we call the police in Springfield, Ohio. We talked to people there. This is not happening. There was one 911 call from someone saying that a goose was taken from the city center or what have you. But nothing could be confirmed about that. So this is a story that they've concocted and created to damage and degrade the reputation of people who are in this country legally. And here's the question. He talks about how, it's Kamala Harris's fault that these people are here. Whatever. They're here legally. So is what you're telling me that you don't just not like illegal people that are here illegally, you don't like people that are here legally as well? So it's all immigrants you don't like. Is that right? So we're just this non-immigration country now? It's really, really, really ugly and frustrating to see that so many people would support the ugliness. I think that's what hurts my heart the most. There's a story about this man in Ohio, and he has been in public service for 30 years. He's the sheriff and running again in Ohio in Portage County. His name is Bruce Zukowski. And again, he's up for re-election. Look how ugly this is. He made this request on 2 separate Facebook accounts just a couple of days ago. He used insulting language toward the Democratic presidential candidate, Kamala Harris. And apparently the comments that he made were based off of a Fox News broadcast. He shared photos of the broadcast with the chyron across the bottom, blaming Kamala Harris for open borders, for destroying small towns, and fueling a migrant crime wave. So here's what he posted. When people ask me, said Mr. Zukowski, what's gonna happen if the flip-flopping laughing hyena wins? I say, write down all of the addresses of the people who had her signs in their yards. So when the illegal human locust, which she supports, need places to live, we'll already have the addresses of their new families who supported their arrival. He wants people, there he is, Mr. Zukowski, he's the sheriff there. He wants people who support him to write down the addresses of everyone who has a Kamala Harris yard sign or is a known Kamala Harris supporter. What? Is he not going to be the sheriff for everyone? Is this voter intimidation at its finest? I'm flabbergasted that this is allowed, that he's not facing some kind of charge. The person running against him says, this is crazy. His name is John Barber. He said the sheriff's comments should be considered voter intimidation. As the chief law enforcement officer for the county, the sheriff is sworn to protect and serve all people, not just the ones who vote for him. How is the public, he said, supposed to have faith in public safety when they fear political retribution? He's making that faith impossible. And then he said this, any elected official, and this is what I take issue with, any elected official is free to put whatever they want on their personal Facebook page. Anything that someone believes is intimidation, the way to counter that is to vote against that in November, and the 109,000 registered voters should fire any elected official that tries to intimidate them. So here his rival in the race is saying any elected official is free to put whatever they want on their personal Facebook page. I would argue if you're the sheriff in this area, no, you can't put whatever you want. You can't put threats on your Facebook page. You can't intimidate voters on your Facebook page. And if there isn't a law against it, there ought to be. And I'm for free speech. But when you're an elected public official, you have duties and obligations to the citizens in your town. You can't be going and telling people, write down all the people that are supporting Kamala Harris. This is crazy. This is what we're coming to. I'm shocked. Portage County is about 40 miles from Cleveland, and if this is the kind of thing that's going on in Ohio, it makes me so grateful to live in California. Those people are nuts. I don't even know. If they don't vote that guy out, and again, 30 years in public service. This is the kind of person they have installed in office there. That's wild to me. This is so ugly that the man who was the county commissioner there, he was the Portage County commissioner and a member of the county's Republican Central Committee. After that sheriff made the post, he stepped down. Thank goodness. He said, he put up a video. He said he can't support the lying, mistrust, the bullying, and the misleading of people in the Republican Party in Portage County. He said it's not the leadership I want to be a part of, not the leadership I would follow, and I would encourage others not to follow the same. To me, he said, the damage to which this group of folks have done to the Republican Party is heartbreaking. And he steps down, doesn't want to be affiliated with them. I agree. That's embarrassing. That's un-American. So that's what we have in Ohio. You know, in one town, the immigrants are cowering and hiding. You've got people trying to support them. Do you see this story? This is kind of, you know, with all that ugliness, let's have a little bright spot. There is a story about there are some Haitian restaurants because of the Haitian population there. And from the Springfield News-Sun, one of the managers of this Springfield Haitian restaurant is reminding everyone they came to this town to work. And it looks like the community is supporting them. There are lines out the door of people that are coming to this Haitian restaurant to support the business, to support the Haitians there. Not everybody is getting ugly and nasty about this. The quote from the manager says, a lot of people come here to try the food. They say, don't worry, we're with you. His name is Romain Pierre. He's a Haitian immigrant living in this area. He said one family brought a bouquet of flowers and gave it to them, that people have been visiting and enjoying the food, and they say everyone is welcome in this restaurant. So some people are supportive, And that's lovely. I'm glad to see that some people are supportive. Let's hope there's not somebody taking note of all of the people that are supporting the Haitian restaurant, right? This is crazy. This is ugly. You talk about a mudslinging, ugly election, and turning voters against each other in America now. We've talked a lot about this show, on this show, that there's an effort to make it so that there's a delay in the certification of votes, which is scary. Now there's an effort, and here's another bright spot, by former governors, Democrats and Republicans, to urge their successors to certify election results. This story out of Politico. It's a bipartisan group of former governors now launching this campaign to convince their successors to certify their state's votes after the upcoming November election. Defying possible pressure from Trump and Trump supporters. Right now, there are nearly 20 ex-governors who have signed on to this effort. Launching today on National Constitution Day, more are expected in the weeks ahead. It's organized by a pro-democracy group called Keep Our Republic. They say they're sending letters to all 50 state houses urging sitting governors to certify election results by December 11th deadlines prescribed by federal law. So we know that in Georgia, there's this effort to allow the certification of the vote to kind of hang in limbo as part of a strategy. But so far, signing on to make sure that the votes are certified in a timely fashion, Republican former governors Jeb Bush of Florida, John Kasich of Ohio, George Allen of Virginia, Scott McCallum of Wisconsin, former Democratic governors Ted Strickland of Ohio, Gray Davis of California. So I just I'm lifted. I'm given a little hope that there's this effort to make sure that our free and fair election system continues, despite people trying to drag it down and tear it down. That there are true leaders in America, Republican leaders, Democratic leaders, and they're all fighting to make sure that our system continues. There's a former Michigan governor, his name is Jim Blanchard, who's a Democrat. He was governor in Michigan from 83 to 91. He said, "What happened in 2020 was crazy and awful, but we're going to be united in a bipartisan fashion to make sure we protect the right to vote and the results, and we just want to make sure that our fellow governors realize that there's no discretion here." Thank you. Thank you. Tom Corbett, who is a former governor of Pennsylvania, a Republican, said he was disappointed that the nominee of his party refused to admit that he lost in 2020 and appeared to be laying the groundwork for suggesting that this year's election would be rigged as well. He said, when you make some allegations, you have to have some evidence. And he said he hasn't seen any evidence. So this group of former governors is hoping to provide political cover for those GOP executives that Trump may try to pressure this time around. We saw him calling around last time. What was it, Tony? I just need 11,780 votes. Did I get the number right? Yeah. So I'm hoping this makes a difference. And it's, again, another bright spot. I'm lifted up by this. So we'll see who signs on in the coming days, a story I'll be paying attention to. And I hope that you will be paying attention to it as well. Some legal things happening as well. But first, let's do a little bit of news, Tony. Why don't we get news? Because I know we've got Jefferson Graham on the way in. So let's have a little news of the day. Here it comes. Thank you. On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. This report sponsored by Coachella Valley Coffee. And boy, is the iced tea good today. I feel bad for Mark right now because wherever he is, he did not bring his Coachella Valley coffee, and that's a real bummer. On to the news. The there's a new study. Let's talk about not uplifting. There's a new study warning 39 million people could die worldwide by 2050 due to antimicrobial resistance. It's related to superbugs that don't respond to antibiotics because they've been used so much, including for colds and other viruses. Antibiotics are designed to fight bacteria, things like pneumonia, sepsis, and life-threatening fungal infections. And again, we're in real trouble because now there are antimicrobial resistance happening where we're not going to be able to fight these things off. Prosecutors say Sean Diddy Combs has allegedly abused and exploited women since at least 2008. Combs is facing 3 counts of racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud or coercion, and transportation to engage in prostitution. U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Damian Williams, said Combs used his business empire to carry out criminal activity. Can we hear it, Tony? This is crazy.
Combs allegedly planned and controlled the sex performances, which he called freak-offs, and he often electronically recorded them. The freak-offs sometimes lasted days at a time, involved multiple commercial sex workers, and often involved a variety of narcotics, such as ketamine, ecstasy, and GHB, which Combs distributed to the victims to keep them obedient and compliant. As alleged, when Combs didn't get his way, he was violent, and he subjected victims to physical, emotional, and verbal abuse so that they would participate in the freak-offs, and that Combs hit, kicked, threw objects at, and dragged victims, at times by their hair. On one occasion in March of 2016, that conduct was captured on video and later reported in the media.
I mean, this
Specifically,
is crazy.
Combs kicked.
This is crazy. This is someone who's been in the public eye. This is someone who's famous and managed to allegedly get away with all of this for so long. Wow. Just wow. Meanwhile, Ghislaine Maxwell's sex trafficking conviction is being upheld by a U.S. appeals court. Maxwell, an associate to Jeffrey Epstein, was trying to get her sex trafficking conviction and sentencing overturned. She was given 20 years behind bars in 2021 for helping to recruit and groom underage girls who then Epstein sexually abused. The judge says, no. Your conviction and your sentence stands. Here's an accident for you. There was an above-ground natural pipeline near Houston that exploded after it was hit by a truck. It's still burning. Crews capped this valve yesterday, but there's still product inside that needs to flame out. This pipeline near a neighborhood, at least 5 homes damaged by this flames, they could see this 25 miles away. This truck hit a valve and whew, look at that. I mean, that's quite the conflagration. And again, still burning a day later. Can you imagine? I mean, that's a spectacular car accident. Again, 5 homes damaged by the flames here, and it's still burning a day later. Wild. The race for the White House heating up with under 50 days until Election Day. This is coming right up. Will the ugliness stop when it stops? I sure hope so. Former President Trump set to attend a town hall tonight in Michigan, which will be moderated by an Arkansas governor, and his former White House press secretary, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, will be there. Meanwhile, Vice President Kamala Harris is taking part in a discussion hosted by the National Association of Black Journalists in Philadelphia this afternoon. Secretary of State Antony Blinken traveling to Egypt this week, but will skip a stop in Israel this time around. And that is something that hasn't happened before in this area. So the missing of Israel, you could call it, comes as doubts rise about a ceasefire and hostage deal being sealed before President Biden leaves office. And again, it's the first time since the start of the war in Gaza nearly a year ago that Blinken has visited the Middle East without stopping in Israel. The Coast Guard is holding public hearings on last year's submersible implosion. 5 people were killed as the Ocean Gate Titan submersible made its way to visit the wreck of the Titanic. The hearings started yesterday with testimony from a former director of engineering at OceanGate and are scheduled to run through September 27th. So we'll keep hearing about some of the things that are said at this public hearing. Yeah, there's the Titan. They showed yesterday the wreckage of the Titan, pictures that hadn't been seen before. It was sad. Teen accounts are coming to Instagram. Parent company Meta Platforms children and set a timer on their time screen, their screens. The feature is both new and for existing accounts. Current teenage users will be notified that their profiles will be migrated over to the teen tier. So, some more rules for teens on Instagram. Couldn't be a bad thing, could it? I mean, got to do something to protect kids. The Biden administration is announcing new regulations to curb the significant increased abuse of the de minimis shipping exemption by Chinese e-commerce giants. The White House says Chinese retail giants Shein, Temu, and Alibaba have all abused the de minimis shipping exemption, which allows shipments of over $800 or less to enter the U.S. duty-free. And that, they say, has flooded the market with low-cost items while evading tariffs. The administration plans to introduce new rules to close down that loophole. There's a big celebration. Look at that. Yeah, number of packages entering the United States. Crazy. There's a big celebration planned tonight for former President Jimmy Carter. The former president's 100th birthday tribute coming just a little bit early. His birthday isn't officially until October 1st, but he's already the longest living president in the country's history. The festivities are taking place at Atlanta's Fox Theater, a celebration of Jimmy Carter's 100th birthday. Again, not officially until October 1st, but celebrating it tonight. I read that his grandson says he wants to hold out until his birthday until the election so that he's able to cast his ballot for Kamala Harris. And this is what's giving him the inspiration to hang on, because he's been in hospice for quite a while. So, celebrating 100 years. Wow. In California, there's another effort to create more housing. It's now in the hands of Governor Gavin Newsom. There's a bill that's been sent to his desk to speed up the process of converting office buildings into mixed-use housing. This is for downtown cities still struggling with the empty space after workers went remote during the pandemic. The lawmaker behind the push says this will remove the red tape that makes such conversions nearly impossible. There's a Southern California city being warned to end its ban on new homeless shelters or face legal action. Governor Newsom calls it unfathomable that Norwalk would pass such an ordinance. He says it's counterproductive and it's immoral for any community to think they've done enough when people are still in need. The state sent city leaders a notice of violation ahead of today's meeting on possibly extending this ban on any new homeless shelters for 10 months. More secure EBT cards are coming to California. Families in need were supposed to get them before the summer, but it took a little longer to add microchips. This is expected to protect against thieves using skimming devices at ATM stores, gas stations, trying to steal money and food benefits loaded onto these EBT cards each month. The crime wave started in 2021. So far, no exact date given for mailing the upgraded cards, but officials are hoping to roll them out in January. And California is marking a milestone in protecting drinking water supplies for millions of people. It's now been 10 years since a landmark law began in the middle of an historic drought, tackling overpumping of groundwater, which makes up 40% of California's total water supply in a normal year, 60% during a dry one. About 85% of people rely on groundwater, and Governor Newsom says it's also critical for the economy and critical for the environment as well. There's a lawsuit brewing. Miley Cyrus getting sued over her song Flowers with a music rights investment platform claiming she copied parts of a Bruno Mars single. According to Rolling Stone, Tempo Music Investments claims the Grammy-winning hit uses Mars' 2013 ballad When I Was Your Man. Lawsuit also blames several companies for distributing Flowers, including Sony Music Publishing, Apple, Target, Walmart. Tempo owns a percentage of the rights to Mars' song. The singer himself and his co-writers are not named as plaintiffs in this suit, not involved in this one. So, wow. Yeah, there they are. And again, Bruno Mars not involved. The people who own the rights to that song, they're the ones that are involved. I've heard both songs, and I've never thought one was based on the other. It'll be interesting to see how that all pans out. Billy Joel is finally moving out of his Florida mansion. The Long Island native has been trying to sell his 13,000 square foot oceanfront home in Manalapan for 6 years after prices changed and market relistings for this mansion. Joel bought the home for $22.1 million in 2015. He finally settled on $49.9 million as the final listing price. Meantime, the purchase price is still under wraps for how much that thing went for. It's pretty nice. Look at it, right on the ocean there. Wow. 49.9 mil. Pretty nice, Billy Joel. Finally sold. In New York, former late-night talk show host David Letterman is being praised for showing up for jury duty in New York City. Why wouldn't he? He's retired. What else is he doing? Letterman was photographed around town while heading down to 500 Pearl Street, seen talking to reporters there. One judge took to social media to convey his appreciation to Letterman and all jurors who showed up to perform their civic duty. The judge pointing out that in his county, King County, they have somewhere between 19 and 22% response to juror summons only. So there's David Letterman headed to court. This report is sponsored by Coachella Valley Coffee. Oh, is it so good? Hand roasted, fresh, best coffee Mark has ever tasted. And I see the notes from you guys saying you agree. And I'll tell you, I don't ever want to be without my Coachella Valley Coffee vanilla iced tea. It is truly so tasty and so good. And light and fresh, and I'm actually saving money on my Coachella Valley iced tea because I'm not buying it at other places. So you can get 10% off. Mark T at checkout. Mark T all together at checkout gives you 10% off. It's CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. So check the website. Spend some time surfing around there, see what they have to offer. And if you end up with anything in your cart, please don't forget Mark T at checkout gets you that 10% off. And our thanks to Coachella Valley Coffee for sponsoring the news on The Mark Thompson Show. I'm Kim McAllister, and this is The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Who's Mark Thompson?
Feels great, baby.
Let me kick down the door and talk to my cheap sons and daughters. No context will suffice to explain the hurt and anguish caused by my words. I apologize to all who have been hurt.
I stand corrected. I misspoke. My words upset so many people.
And I wanted to apologize to the Asian community, the Asian American community.
Bless America. The end.
There's never been anything like this.
Do I hit it long? Is Trump strong? Huh?
Who is having that conversation?
It's fantastic.
That's not fake. That's real.
The science is ridiculous.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
If you get it in order, you get extra points.
Listen to me. I don't want to hear you.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at?
This is a word from the Lord, and he's not happy.
There is no defense for my conduct. It was wrong, it was stupid, and I'm trying to be a better person.
Don't ever use that word.
You get nothing.
What's a guilty pleasure you have?
Seriously, what the
The Mark Thompson Show, Kim McAllister filling in for Mark Thompson. We're waiting for Jefferson Graham. So far, I don't see him popping in. No, but that's okay because it gives me a little bit of time to talk to you about some legal things that happened. As a matter of fact, I just got an email from Mark about Judge Eileen Cannon. His email said, "It's the Federalist Society vacation games. All the right-wing judges can play." And this is a crazy story. Judge Eileen Cannon has apparently failed to disclose a right-wing junket. She, of course, has oversight of the Donald Trump classified documents case, and she's definitely been criticized about her handling of this. Apparently, she's repeatedly violated a rule requiring federal judges to disclose their attendance at private seminars. Now, it's not good. Apparently, she went to an event in Arlington, Virginia, honoring the late Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia. There was a lecture, a private dinner. She sat among members of Scalia's family, fellow Federalist Society members, more than 30 conservative federal judges. Organizers billed the event as an excellent opportunity to connect with judicial colleagues. Problem: there's a rule that was developed in 2006 intended to shine a light on judges' attendance at paid seminars that could pose conflicts or influence their decisions. It requires them to file disclosure forms for trips like this within 30 days and to make them public on the court's website as well. Didn't do it, and it's not the first time that she did not comply with this rule. According to ProPublica, in 2021 and 2022, Judge Cannon took week-long trips to the luxurious Sage Lodge in Prairie, Montana, for legal colloquiums sponsored by George Mason, which named its law school for Scalia, thanks to $30 million in gifts that Leonard Leo helped organize. So, conflict of interest much? Come on now. And if you're going to do it, disclose it. Say that you've done it. Comply with the law. And if you feel no shame and no guilt, move forward with your visits and your junkets and your dinners with Scalia's family and your Leonard Leo interactions. But tell people. Tell people. Come on now. I don't know if you saw this, but Mark Meadows, who of course is the former Trump chief of staff, has been trying repeatedly to get his Arizona election case moved to federal court, which makes a lot of sense if you're Mark Meadows. Once again, a judge is rejecting Mark Meadows' bid to move his charges in Arizona's fake elector case to federal court. It's the second time they've done this, that he's failed to get his case moved out of state court into federal court. The judge says no. Judge John Tucci said Meadows missed a deadline for asking for his charges to be moved to federal court and failed to show the allegations against him related to his official duties as chief of staff to the president. So, no, not doing it. While Meadows was not himself a fake elector, prosecutors say he worked with other Trump campaign members to submit names of fake electors from Arizona and other states to Congress to try to keep Trump in office despite his November of 2020 defeat. And Meadows has pleaded not guilty to charges in Arizona. He's also pleaded not guilty to charges in Georgia. So, yikes. So that case is going to stay in Arizona. There is another court case of interest, and this one involves former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani. He had lawsuit against President Biden for saying during a 2020 presidential debate that Giuliani was a Russian pawn. The judge tossed that suit out, said no. No. So Giuliani takes another loss in court. That's not going to work out. Nope. Even the judge isn't buying it. I'm telling you. These down ballot races, pretty important. One of the races that we've been watching, there's a few of them that are really critical, is in Montana, where something maybe not so great happened to the GOP candidate. It appears that he has doctored a recent TV advertisement trying to take a logo off of his shirt that he was wearing in the ad for this group called the Property and Environment Research Center, PERC. It's a Montana-based think tank with a history of advocating for the privatization of federal public lands. It's become a central issue in this race. So if you're running, you don't really want to be associated with PERC. And there's a little PERC logo on the side of the shirt. And apparently he tried to take it off, remove it digitally for the TV commercial. The campaign for this candidate, GOP Senate candidate from Montana, Tim Sheehy, looks like they tried to doctor to remove it. But earlier this month, they sent out public land-focused mailers to Montana voters, which featured a picture of Sheehy sitting at this campsite with his family and wearing this flannel shirt with that PERC logo. It says, the flyer read, Tim Sheehy knows public lands belong in public hands, and then he's got this PERC logo on the side of his shirt. Is it that the PERC logo was put there by someone else? Or is it him trying to take the PERC logo off? Apparently, it's quite the big scandal in Montana. So this is what they're thinking about up there. All right, very excited. It is Tech Tuesday, and for that, I welcome in Jefferson Graham, who's on location, joining the Mark Thompson Show. Hi, Jefferson Graham.
Hello, hello, hello. I'm sorry for being late.
No,
I'm
it's
on
okay.
an old boat in San Diego.
Are you on the sea?
No, it's the Maritime Museum.
Oh, okay.
This is the Star of India.
All right. What are you doing there?
Doing some photo work for a local hotel, taking pictures all over San Diego.
Nice. All right. Well, thank you for making time to be here on the Mark Thompson Show. You have been looking at this new iPhone, and I guess it's going to be hard for people to get one. Is that what's happening? Or you have the best ways for people that are trying to get a hold of one to manage to make it happen?
Well, the new phones go into stores on Friday. Okay. And once upon a time, a lot of people used to camp out in tents so they could be the first person on the street. And they sort of did away with that by doing these pre-sales. And you pre-order, and then they'll ship them to you. But you know, like when I did the pre-order, I tested the pre-order Friday morning. It was delayed till mid-October. And that was for the top of the line model, which apparently is not selling as well as the entry-level models. There'll be some phones in the stores, but there will be a delay. If you want the iPhone Pro Max, the 16, there will be a delay. And that's just sort of the way it is. It's been that way for the past few years.
Why is it that way? Because you would think, is it the clamoring for them? Because I thought they'd had a slowdown in sales.
I think that Apple likes the way it works. I think they like it being scarce at the beginning. And I think they like people saying, oh, it's really hard to get. I really want it. Right. I think it's a sales thing because they do it every year. Now, granted, they sell 200 million phones a year. That's more, and we've talked about this on the show, that's way more than any other tech product in the world. So, you know, I can't imagine how many churn out of those factories every day.
Yeah. Big day in San Francisco today. It's the start of Dreamforce 2024, which is pretty exciting because there's so many people in San Francisco right now, and there's a lot of celebrities as well. This is always they close down a couple of blocks around the Moscone Center, and you see people wandering around with their Dreamforce, credentials hanging from their lanyards.
Yeah. And I've tried getting a hotel room during that time, and it was very hard and very expensive. And Salesforce is this company that rents their software so that you can keep track of your customers. And they've done quite the job because they've got one of the biggest buildings in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And so it's been very popular with people. This year they're shifting to bots, to AI bots, to bots that can help you with customer service and keep track of your customers. I have never met a bot that I could stand. And I don't know about you, Kim, but I decry this whole move towards AI bots. So,
well, coming this year to San Francisco's Dreamforce 2024, Matthew McConaughey, who of course is the spokesperson for the company, Pink will be there performing, Imagine Dragons will be there performing, actress Kerry Washington, actor Edward Norton. They pack this thing with celebrities every year. It's quite the big to-do.
I guess if a corporation will pay you for an appearance, you'll take the money. And,
I guess you would.
And it happens at most trade shows. What's missing, I guess, is an old rock band to play a few tunes, right?
That's all you need. Absolutely. You just mentioned AI, and I saw this story on TechCrunch about Slack, which I know a lot of tech workers use this function to communicate, especially people working remotely, that Slack is turning into an AI agent hub. And there's a question about whether it should do that or whether it shouldn't do that.
Well, first of all, Slack is owned by Salesforce.
Okay.
So let's connect the dots there.
It's full circle, right?
Yeah. I don't think they should, but I think if Salesforce owns it and they can do whatever they want with it. I have used Slack. Back when I was at USA Day, we had it, and everybody really liked it because it cut down on all those group emails that you had to answer. That was the good part. The bad part was never ending. You were just connected to this machine, and then people would abuse Slack by saying what they watched on TV last night and what they had for lunch, and that's not the use of it. That's not what the purpose is supposed to be of Slack. It's supposed to be to communicate quickly with your coworkers. They have to do what's hot. AI chatbots are hot. We'll see if people can stand. Maybe they'll unsubscribe and not pay for it anymore.
No. There's another story out about Sam Altman, speaking of AI, but he's got a lesser-known crypto project and apparently wants to scan people's irises as part of this I don't know, effort. He's looking at I don't even know how to say this. He's looking at breaking the global economy in a good way. And he says he's got this project called WorldCoin that will help fix it. So he's trying to develop artificial general intelligence, AGI, artificial general intelligence. He thinks this will be the best tool that humanity has ever created. And as part of this, he needs biometric data to create a digital passport called the World ID that can't be replicated by bots, and so we all have to have our irises scanned. What could go wrong?
On this one, I'm for it because I don't like having to carry around a passport or a driver's license.
Okay.
And if I could just use my eye and wink at somebody, great. The less paper, the less credentials, the better. That's where I'm at on that.
That is so interesting that you would say that, because I look at it and I think, I guess I've watched too many movies, because I think if someone wants to steal your information, then they have to take your eyeball.
Okay. I think that'd be a little painful. Yeah.
That's where I'm going with that.
And
I don't know.
And of course, the flip side, Kim, is that who knows that it's going to be 100% accurate and will it work? And no, that's not my eyeball. That's not Lee Harvey Oswald's eyeball. That's my eyeball. You've mistaken me for somebody else, right? Yeah.
Lastly, let's come full circle back around to Apple. The new Apple Watch has been approved now because it can help with sleep apnea. And apparently it's got the FDA approval now to detect sleep apnea. The Apple Watch Series 9, 10, and the Watch Ultra 2. So it's right ahead of their release date, or right on track for their release date. And they're saying, that they're approving this as a tool for sleep apnea.
Yeah, and the release date is on Friday. So Apple Watch, when it came out, was just a basic watch with a bunch of apps that were so small that you couldn't really see them or do anything with them. And the watch was a bomb, and they turned it into a health watch. And that has produced, it's now the best-selling watch in the world. So every time they come up with a new thing, gives people another reason to buy yet another watch. Because really, the watch doesn't change; it tells you the time, right? And it checks your messages. But this is another reason for people to go out and spend $400 for a new watch.
I wonder if it means that your Apple Watch will be covered by insurance, or that, you can get refunded by your insurance if it's now approved as a sleep apnea over-the-counter tool.
I don't know.
But
that would be nice, right?
Yeah, it would be really nice. Jefferson Graham, former writer, tech writer for USA Today, and now with PhotoWalks TV. You can find him on YouTube. Check him out. PhotoWalks TV has also got a great Substack. Jefferson, thank you for joining us from the ship. Oh, what a pretty view today. Look at that.
Yeah, it's gorgeous out here.
So nice. Thank you so much, Jefferson. Have a great day. Bye. Jefferson Graham, everybody. Yay. So glad he came by the show. Also, yay, waiting for David Cay Johnston, who I see has just arrived. And if you don't know who David Cay Johnston is, boy, are you in for a real treat. He is a Pulitzer Prize winning author. He's an investigative journalist. We like to call him our Trumpologist. He's also now a professor at a university in New York. I think it's RIT University, if I'm right on that. Let's welcome David Cay Johnston to the Mark Thompson Show. Hi.
Well, greetings from Rochester Institute of Technology.
Thank you very, very much. How's it going, the new job?
Well, terrific. And I've got my new art up behind me.
Looks good.
From More, which was a journalism review started by New York Times people who were very unhappy with the Times more than 50 years ago. One of them shows a guy with a 1920s suit and hat and candlestick phone saying, "Hello, sweetheart, get me rewrite." That's widely available. The other one I spent 15 years searching for is the companion with a woman who goes, "Hello, handsome, get me rewrite."
Well, it looks very nice in the professor's office, so that's lovely. Yeah, very good. Let's jump into it. I've seen these stories, and I'm so riled up by this. This is a strategy by the Trump campaign to, instead of talking about whether another shot, and this is from the campaign, someone involved with the campaign, whether another shot would be taken at President Trump, to turn it, to flip it, and blame the rhetoric being used by Democrats on the attempts against Trump's life in order to keep the focus off of his safety and onto the issues. This, according to someone with the Trump campaign. So they're blaming Democrats for violent rhetoric. But the problem with this, in my eyes, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, is they think we forgot about January 6th. If you want to talk about violent rhetoric, about inciting, violence against our country, it seems like they're the biggest offenders of all.
Well, all of this is part of a general effort to distract people from the fact that Donald had 4 years in office and did nothing except name some post offices. He signed some bills naming post offices, appoint 3 judges to the U.S. Supreme Court to get rid of Roe v. Wade, and use borrowed money to give his wealthy friends and large corporations massive tax cuts, which, by the way, aren't tax cuts at all. They are tax increases pushed into the future with interest, because ultimately the cost has to be paid for. And this argument that it is the rhetoric of the Democrats that's bringing about violence. This came up, I did overseas television earlier today, and in a country that's very pro-Trump. And that was the host's point there. It's the Democrats who are saying this. It's actors in Hollywood. And I said, well, first of all, actors in Hollywood aren't the center of this. But you will search far and wide, and you're not going to find anything said by Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, or Tim Walz calling for violence. But finding quotes from Donald Trump and J.D. Vance that either urge people to take some kind of action or actually have, as when, remember, Donald in the 2016 campaign encouraged audiences to beat people up. I'll pay your legal bills, he said, which of course he would never do. Well, that's despicable. While J.D. Vance yesterday making comments that basically put a target for some pro-Trump gun nut to shoot her, I think all of that we should pull back from it, and we should focus on what's the issue here. Donald Trump has no plan. It's his con job he's run his whole life. He has concepts of a plan for healthcare 9 years after he promised beautiful, beautiful healthcare, repeal Obamacare, well, beautiful healthcare. And that his whole campaign is a fraud. That's what we need to focus on. The fact is that this is going to be a reasonably close election, should be very troubling to us. This is a man who's a convicted criminal. He's been a con artist his whole life. He makes promises he has no ability to deal with. I don't even have to be president. I can settle the war in Ukraine, just a few phone calls. Nonsense. It's not how the world works, but there are people who believe
one phone call,
this.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
There are people, Kim, who believe this. And that's very troubling because democracy is an idea that grew out of the Enlightenment, and it is based on the idea of reasoned and rational debate. Very robust debate. People are going to scream and yell at each other. That's okay. But at the end of the day, reason and rationality. Much of the support for Donald Trump has nothing to do with reason and rationality, and some of it for Harris, but not much. That's not her core group. It's very much a one-sided election in that sense. And what we should be talking about are the grievances of people who support Trump, which I've written about for decades. They're real, legitimate grievances. The bottom 90% of Americans are no better off today than they were 50 years ago.
You just kind of alluded to this about the lying, and we've seen Trump say Project 2025. I don't know about that. Yeah. I distance myself from this, right? Push it to the side a little bit.
When it began, there's video of him saying, well, these are my people and this is the plan they're developing. And it's his people. He's mentioned 300 times in 900 pages. And so that's ridiculous. It's part of Donald's con.
Well, Professor Johnston, I have video to show you today.
Oh, good.
Because there is secret video surfaced about Trump actually knowing about supporting and saying he'll implement what the Heritage Foundation has come up with and their big grand plan. He gave a speech in either 21 or 22 talking about it. Here's the tape.
Is going to hell. The critical job of institutions such as Heritage is to lay the groundwork, and Heritage does such an incredible job at that. This is a great group, and they're going to lay the groundwork and detail plans for exactly what our movement will do and what your movement will do when the American people give us a colossal mandate to save America. And that's coming. That's coming.
Oh, I don't know anything about Project 2025.
Never heard of it. Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
I mean, really? And so the question, I guess, is, or my feeling is, the statement is, we've heard him lie about it. And now we see the video where he knows about it. He's, conspiring with them to implement these big grand plans. If you have someone lying on such a grand scale about one thing, then what else are they going to lie to you about? And doesn't he realize that people are going to see this and think, oh, now I understand. I caught him in a lie.
Well, the problem with that, Kim, is that to many people, they don't have any problem with the lies because they see this as a greater good issue. It's the ends justify the means, even if they don't know that phrase or what it means. If you have been economically beaten down, and your parents were, that is, you're no better off than people were in the first half of the 1970s. Then Donald Trump comes along and says at every rally, we love you, and promises that he's going to make things better for you. That's an appealing argument until you realize it's all a con. I mean, he had 4 years. He didn't do anything. There was no bill introduced to lower the costs of pharmaceuticals. That was one of his big 2016 campaign promises. Joe Biden got that passed bingo with Nancy Pelosi's help, and only a 5-vote margin in the House and a 50-50 split in the Senate. So Kamala Harris, as vice president, cast the tie-breaking vote. We're going to fix up our infrastructure. Infrastructure week became a joke. He never did anything. Biden quickly got the infrastructure bill passed, and you're seeing all around the country construction crews. I was delayed coming to the university today by one of these projects. Yeah. He said, I'm going to build a wall, a big, beautiful wall with Mexico. Never mind the jokes about the way to defeat a 15-foot wall is a 16-foot ladder. He finally had a section of wall built, steel fencing, actually, and people went to hardware stores in Mexico, bought $99 electric chainsaws and cut right through them. All of it was just a fraud. There's nothing there. And what does Donald do? Well, he attacks Kamala Harris personally. He attacks her race. He attacks her laugh. Not that Donald has a great laugh. He doesn't have anything except appealing to people who are angry about their condition. And the bottom 90% of Americans are legitimately feeling that they have not been treated well. Both Republicans and Democrats have spent too much time coddling the very richest people in the country, coddling people like me who are more than comfortable, and not paying attention to what's happened to the vast majority of people, which is, by the way, closely connected with the decline of unions. If you get a chart of wages over time, adjusted for inflation, and union membership, they almost perfectly track. As unions represented fewer and fewer workers, wages went down. When I'm going to speak this weekend at a joint American-Canadian investigative reporting conference in Toronto, and I know there are going to be young journalists who are going to come up and tell me about jobs they've been offered. And when I tell them that when I was a 19-year-old staff writer at the San Jose Mercury, and my base pay in today's money was more than $65,000 a year, their jaws drop because they're being offered jobs at $26,000, $30,000. And it isn't just that field. Airline pilots, the captains of jumbo jets in the late 70s were making around $1 million in today's money. Now the highest paid pilots are getting about $500,000. So you don't need to feel sorry for them. They're being well paid. But there's been a huge transfer in this country away from work and rewarding it and towards companies and the people who own them. And in part, companies keep, like Boeing. Boeing, constant pressure on workers, quit whining about safety, just let it go, with disastrous results, not only in terms of the crashes, but Boeing's long-term viability. But they had $66 billion to buy back stock. So our economy since the 70s has just gotten completely redone. That's what my economics trilogy was about in certain areas of it: taxes, regulation, and lack of competition. And until Americans understand what happened here, they're going to continue to believe people like Donald Trump who are lying through their teeth. And I'm not so worried about Donald Trump as I am the competent, hardworking, because Donald is neither competent nor hardworking, people who are looking at his success and going, wow, you know what, I can put together a campaign and turn this country into more of an oligarchy than it is now, and maybe even become dictator. And if you think there aren't some of the very conservative senators in Washington thinking that way, you haven't been listening to their speeches and their public comments.
It's my hope that this is a one-off, that no one else has this kind of weird pull charisma thing that would dupe people and make them fall for this. But maybe I'm hopelessly naive, because I'm hoping that when Trump loses this election, we're finally done with it. He's going to be too old to run again. It's going to be over. Is that a dumb thing to think?
No, it's not. It's not dumb. I mean, optimism is an essential element of the American character and idea about our country. Donald, of course, doesn't stoke any optimism. All he stokes is anger, retribution, looking backward. The country's going to hell. San Francisco has been destroyed. I'm flying out to California for one day next week to go to a party with my high school classmates in Santa Cruz. And I'm going to swing through San Francisco because I want to see the destruction that Donald says has been destroyed by Kamala Harris. But The only thing missing from other people who are would-be dictators is that charisma factor. Donald has charisma. There's no question about that. Joe Biden, I would argue, is sort of the antithesis of non-charisma, the model, of non-charisma. Mm-hmm. But the economic conditions in this country, until they change significantly, they've improved a lot now under Biden, but we have a long way to go. It took us 50 years to dig a hole. We're not going to get out of it even in 3 presidential administrations. One of the things Trump and his allies are saying is, well, they're lying to you about the numbers. Joe Biden didn't create 15 million jobs. Yes, he did, even with the correction to the error, which I think needs to be explained by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Donald Trump's administration before the pandemic was creating jobs at a lower rate than Obama after the Great Recession. Joe Biden has created, even with the correction, more jobs in less than 4 years than every Republican president since World War II. So that's Dwight D. Eisenhower, the hero of World War II, Richard Nixon, Jerry Ford, the only unelected president, Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, and Donald Trump. All of them together didn't equal over this enormous period of years, more than 70 years, what Joe Biden's done. And the argument that, well, they'll just come back from before the recession. No, that's not true. A great many of the lost jobs were recovered before Trump took office. This is real significant growth, especially in manufacturing. Manufacturing has been the key to people who don't have a college education having a solid middle-class life.
Right.
And having unions in manufacturing has been crucial to that. And of course, we made this policy decision when Nixon was president that we were going to export jobs to China and later Vietnam, the Philippines, et cetera. And when I sometimes think about it, I say that you've got to marvel at the courage and generosity of America's blue-collar factory workers, because they gave up their hold on a stable middle-class life so that the rural poor of China could live a better life. Because that's what happened. It's just not the way anybody talks about it. So be optimistic, but be wary, because everything but the charisma is readily available. The anger is there. The people who will stoke it, the courts who are antagonistic to anything that is social progress. I mean, I'd be very concerned if the U.S. Supreme Court got a case arguing that Medicare and Social Security are unconstitutional. I think they're perfectly constitutional under the duty of Congress to take whatever steps it thinks are necessary for the welfare of the country. But I don't trust this Supreme Court on that level for 1 second, given what they've done and the astonishing reporting. And if viewers and listeners have not seen it, the New York Times yesterday had, because I saw it online, I don't know if it was in Sunday's paper or Monday's, but I think it was Monday's, the most detailed inside reporting on what's going on in the Supreme Court that's ever been done. There's nothing, not even the book, The Brethren by Woodward and Bernstein, comes close to this reporting on how John Glover Roberts was setting up to help Donald Trump through the Supreme Court. And if you know the history of John Glover Roberts, who began his career in the federal government suppressing the black vote, that was his job, suppress the black vote. His use of the Supreme Court to make it easier to suppress blacks from voting, black Americans from voting. This is an astonishing and important piece of journalism. And by the way, don't be sanguine that Kamala Harris will win. She's going to win the popular vote by a huge margin, but the Trump Republicans are doing everything they can to make sure she does not win the Electoral College. They're purging voters in Georgia. They're threatening people in Texas. There's a sheriff in Ohio who's told people to take down the names of everybody who has a Kamala Harris sign. If that isn't government intimidation of your rights, I don't know what is. But if you're, as this man is, part of this ridiculous constitutional sheriff argument that the highest law in the land is a sheriff, please let us go back to Robin Hood and the Sheriff of Nottingham. This is sort of seen by many white supremacist Americans as their last hurrah. If they don't succeed this time, they're scared. And you're seeing this in J.D. Vance doubling down on the fictional story about cats and dogs being eaten. Donald Trump saying during the debate, well, a fellow said it on TV. I mean, that's the level of depth of Donald Trump's knowledge of things. A guy said it on TV.
Crazy. And I'm glad you brought up that sheriff story. We talked about it earlier on the show, but basically for people just catching us now, this is a sheriff who has posted on his 2 Facebook accounts that he wants everyone to keep track of who the Kamala Harris supporters are, write down their addresses so that we can then send the immigrants who will be needing homes to their houses. But it smacks of, as you say, voter intimidation. His rival, the person running against him, came out and said he can post whatever he wants to on social media. Our job is to beat him at the ballot box. And I thought to myself, really? Can he really say whatever he wants? This is a sheriff of Portage County in Ohio. This is an elected public official who has a duty to keep people safe. Can he really say whatever he wants? Is it legal for him to engage in public voter intimidation like this?
All right,
that can't be
the
law.
Supreme Court in more than 100 years of jurisprudence on the First Amendment has basically said that the First Amendment has degrees to it. So commercial speech has the lowest protections. Some of the people that, because of my reporting, were prosecuted and sent to prison for tax evasion. So long as all you did was say, taxes are voluntary, I don't have to pay them and I don't pay them, that's not a crime. But if you take money from people to sell them on the technique you're using to evade taxes, that's not protected by the First Amendment. That's criminal behavior. If you and I plot to kill Mark Thompson, that's not protected. And if I were a lawyer, which I'm not, but if I were a lawyer and you were talking to me, it's not protected to do that. But political speech, the Supreme Court has generally held is very, very robust and has given it the highest level of protection. That doesn't mean it's without limitations. The Supreme Court itself has said, one of the most famous First Amendment lawyers said at the Supreme Court, and they agreed, that no law doesn't really mean no law. And perhaps the best example is Congress shall pass no law establishing religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or the non-exercise by implication. Mm-hmm. If you want to revive the Aztec religion, you're free to do so. But the minute you pick up a knife over the virgin who you're about to murder, you don't even have to hit her with a knife. You've committed a crime and you can be prosecuted. The sheriff in his private account has one set of rights, and it's Facebook that ought to be asking questions about itself. But sorry about that.
That's okay.
But on his official account, no, it is not appropriate for him to use his official office for anything like that. And I'm sure if he was put under oath, he would say, these immigrants are a danger. I'm protecting my constituents. Well, maybe, but you don't do that by threatening other constituents. That's what sheriffs did in the South in the civil rights era. And the courts were pretty clear that's not acceptable.
You brought up Chief Justice John Roberts a little while ago, and there's a story out of The Guardian today that talks about how it really looks like he's in Trump's pocket. The Chief Justice reportedly took an unusually active role, according to The Guardian, in 3 recent Supreme Court decisions centering on Trump.
Well, that all comes out of the New York Times story.
Oh, is that what you're talking about? Yeah.
The Guardian is just riffing off of
the New York Times
story.
So he uses he urges his colleagues to rule quickly on the immunity. The immunity is the big one. He also urges them to rule quickly on January 6th. Any repercussions from this? Is this just going to be okay?
Well, it requires a 2/3 vote of the Senate to remove someone from office after impeachment. So in the next Congress, assuming the Republicans lose their majority in the House and the Democrats hang on to and may perhaps, unlikely, but perhaps add to their majority in the Senate, they can pass an impeachment. That's essentially a political indictment. It's not criminal or political. It's a political act. But they can't get enough votes in the Senate. So he's safe. The way to address this, I believe, is first of all to throw a lot of light on the Supreme Court and do everything we can to expose what's going on. I mean, it turns out Roberts knew 3 years ago that Justice Alito was flying this flag of the insurrectionists. The Washington Post actually reported it. It just got buried in a story that nobody noticed. It just didn't get picked up. The same way the recent Washington Post story, incredibly well done, that the Egyptian government gave Donald Trump $10 million as basically a payoff, has gone nowhere. Primarily because it took so much work and nobody has the sources to go duplicate it or advance the story. If you can advance a story, as happened with Watergate once it got going. So it wasn't just the Washington Post. The LA Times was breaking lots of stories, the New York Times some, Time Magazine some. It kept developing. But if there's no way to develop the story, it just dies.
Yeah.
And I believe the fundamental solution is this. Congress determines the size of the U.S. Supreme Court. There is no other directive, just that the Congress shall decide the size. I think that the next Congress should do what Joe Biden would not do. We should increase the Supreme Court from 9 members to 15. The reason for that is there are 15 lower courts that need to be supervised. Okay. So no doubling up. Secondly, a constitutional amendment should be introduced that if you're appointed to the Supreme Court, you can only serve 18 years, one term, 18 years. And at the end of that, we will pay you your salary for life, but you may not practice law. You can write law books, you can teach law, but you can't lobby or anything else. You comes with a burden. And the same burden that if you become a U.S. military officer, you are, and I'm being technical here, but up to age 70, you're subject to recall. You know, you think you retired or resigned. No, actually, they can force you to come back up to age 70. And so we should change the Constitution. Nobody expected we were going to have Supreme Court justices serve as long as they have. Clarence Thomas, the least qualified Supreme Court justice in my lifetime, has been on the court now for 31 years, I believe, 32 years. No, wait a minute, longer than that. Be 32 years or 33 years. That takes a big lift. And like the Equal Rights Amendment, it might not happen, but there's no reason for Congress not to expand the court. And were that to happen, the smartest thing for Kamala Harris to do as president of the United States would be to appoint 6 serious, widely respected scholars who don't have a political history and are known very much to be centrists in their views from the bench. We have lots of judges like that. By the way, you don't have to be a lawyer to be in the Supreme Court. They can appoint me Speaker of the Supreme Court. Yep. You could be Speaker of the House, even though you weren't elected to the House. There's no requirement.
I didn't know that. Wow.
No requirement for the Speaker be a member of the House. That's tradition. But we have fundamental things we need to do because of Donald Trump infecting the court with ideologues. Yeah. And when you add the 3 people he put on the court to John Glover Roberts, whose mission from the day he took an oath as a federal lawyer was to suppress the votes of black people, and he's been working at it on the Supreme Court now for years, a number of decisions. There's a real fundamental need for reform, and then we need to have fundamental economic reform so that the fruits of the productivity of the country are more widely distributed to the people who make that happen. You can still have, and we should have, because I think it's been the best system anybody's come up with so far. We don't live in the Star Trek world of tea, Earl Grey hot, it just appears. Capitalism, when it's actual competitive capitalism, is very successful, but you have to have rules. And one of those rules is you can't oppress all the workers and take all the money for the already rich. That's what we've been doing, taking much too much for the already rich.
I promised I would have you out by 12:30, and it's 1 minute past. Happy Constitution Day, David Cay Johnston.
Thank you. You too. And enjoy. One thing, if you talk about the Hezbollah exploding pagers today.
Oh, I haven't talked about it yet.
Well, I was on Middle East TV, and they were very carefully, cautiously talking about this as an unusual occurrence. When hundreds and hundreds of pagers held by members of Hezbollah go off at the same time and turn out to be little bombs, That's not a coincidence. That is a fiendishly evil act of war.
Yeah.
So
it
take care.
Is. Thanks, David Cay Johnston. Always appreciate you coming by the show.
Thank you.
Bye. David Cay Johnston, everybody. How lucky are we to have him here on the Mark Thompson Show? Let's do a little sweeper and come right back with some more news, Tony. Let's do it. This is the Mark Thompson Show. I'm Kim McAllister. The news coming up right after this.
The Mark Thompson Show.
This is Mark Thompson.
Everything is going extremely well.
What he's got going here is a situation.
You people are crazy.
You just don't get it, really. You don't.
I cannot believe it.
It's fantastic.
Thompson, party of four.
What are you doing?
You cannot say you love your country.
Sayonara, sucker. Good day, sir.
Why are you yelling? Seriously, what the
As David Cay Johnston just mentioned moments ago, there's been a horrible incident in Lebanon. I'm Kim McAllister on the Mark Thompson Show. This report sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. At least 9 people killed, 2,800 wounded in this attack that targeted pagers held by members of the Iran-backed Lebanese militant group Hezbollah across Lebanon today. This according to the Lebanese health minister. Iran's ambassador to Lebanon was one of those injured, that according to Iranian state media. What we know, according to CNN, is that these exploding pagers had been purchased by Hezbollah in recent months, according to one Lebanese security source. The pagers that blew up were, again, recently purchased. We don't know exactly where they were purchased. There are other countries now offering assistance after these pager blasts, but this is as Tony's bringing up here, this wave of exploding pagers. And again, 9 killed, 2,800 injured in this horrible attack. Both presidential candidates campaigning this week, but the investigation into Sunday's attempted assassination of former President Trump is really dominating the headlines. Attorney General Merrick Garland said today the entire Justice Department is investigating the incident at Trump's golf course on Sunday. The suspect is behind bars as this investigation continues. As we mentioned earlier, Sean Diddy Combs is pleading not guilty in his federal criminal case. The hip-hop and business mogul was arraigned in a New York court this afternoon after a grand jury indicted him on sex trafficking and racketeering charges. He faces up to life in prison if he's convicted of all of these charges against him. America's top diplomat on his way back to the Middle East, but this visit does not include a stop in Israel. Secretary of State Antony Blinken's trip to Egypt comes as doubts grow about reaching a ceasefire or hostage exchange deal before President Biden leaves office. U.S. gymnast Jordan Chiles appealing a decision that stripped her of a bronze medal in the Paris Olympics. Chiles lost out on bronze in the women's gymnastics floor final when the Romanian team challenged a decision to revise her final score. Chiles' attorney confirming yesterday that a formal appeal has been lodged, and so this Olympic bronze medal issue is not over. North Carolina's Governor Roy Cooper is urging people to stay off of flooded roadways after yesterday's powerful storm. Coastal communities in the state's southeastern portion took on severe damage as a potential tropical cyclone 8 moved through this region. The National Weather Service says a portion of northeast North Carolina remains under a flood watch until this evening. So that's pretty scary in that area. There are fans that will not be able to catch REO Speedwagon on the road anytime soon, citing irreconcilable differences between frontman Kevin Cronin and bassist Bruce Hall. The band announced they will cease touring effective January 1st. So REO Speedwagon, no more touring for them. The statement says neither Cronin nor Hall have any intentions of retiring or leaving the band, but the situation has led the band to stop touring. So that's it for REO Speedwagon. Oh no. They were kind of a staple of, you could always see REO Speedwagon at the county fair. I guess not anymore. So REO Speedwagon is not doing it. The box office preview, Transformers 1, is projected to take first place when it debuts in theaters this weekend. The animated origin story is expected to bring between $30 and $40 million in its first outing. Transformers 1. Tony, I know you've got the Transformers in your office, so this one's for you.
No.
It'll be
No.
No, you're not seeing Transformers 1?
I don't. No, it's incorrect.
No.
Incorrect Transformers. No.
They think it will be enough to knock down Beetlejuice to second place. So we'll see.
That movie didn't do very good, did it? I don't think it did
No.
great in box. Yeah, these are not good movies, everyone.
They're trying to add $25 million Beetlejuice is to its third weekend in theaters. Also new this week, the thriller Never Let Go, starring Halle Berry, looking to make between $4 and $6 million in its first weekend. Yikes. This report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. It is the best coffee you'll ever taste, according to Mark Thompson and many other people. And I will tell you, it's the best iced tea I've ever tasted. Hot tea, cold tea, whatever you want to do with it, it's all available at CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Check out the website, CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. All organic, all wonderfully fresh, hand roasted. They do participate in buying the coffee beans from female-owned farms, and they really give back to communities from where they source the beans. Really worth checking out, CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. And if you find anything you'd like to purchase, please make sure that you put in Mark T at checkout to get your exclusive Mark Thompson Show 10% off, CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Upcoming, we have a wonderful interview that Mark has left for us with the former executive director for the Republican Party. His name is Jamie Miller, and he's now a political consultant. He and Mark have a great conversation about politics, and we're playing it for you right now. Here it is.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Morning. You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Stay at home and get baked.
All right, right on. I am super excited about having this next guy on. He is someone who's been very active in the Republican Party. He is someone who's been a campaign manager. He's been very active in Florida politics. And he writes a super provocative column that appears regularly on his website, reasonablearguments.com. We are going to knock the reasonable right out of him. He is Jamie Miller, everybody. Come on. Look at you, you big Republican stud. I love it.
Thanks for having me on, Mark.
There's a lot of...
What a great introduction.
Yeah, of course. There's a lot of... There's a lot of partisan politics now, and one of the things I like about you is that there appears to be, and I'm just getting to know you a little bit based on your writings and talking to you a little bit, there appears to be a quality of evaluation, an objective evaluation of a situation that can really be maybe instructive to us during this highly partisan, highly politicized political discourse. I mean, when we talk about things in America now, I feel like they're so informed by the R and the D that we have trouble oftentimes getting to solutions. I'll kind of cut right to things because our time is limited, Jamie Miller, but how do you see everything coming together, the top of ticket stuff and the down ticket stuff in this election cycle?
Yeah, I mean, it's I've written quite a bit about how I believe that 2016 was a very unique election for Donald Trump, especially in the Rust Belt states, where there was no U.S. Senate race in Michigan, and Republican incumbents ran in both Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and won. In 2020, we had Republican incumbents in Arizona and Georgia who lost, and Democrats were running in those Rust Belt states. So I kind of look at the election as a whole, state by state. And for instance, I think Michigan is an opportunity for Donald Trump, but Ohio may be an opportunity for Kamala Harris, because there is a strong Democrat incumbent U.S. Senator running for re-election in Ohio.
This is interesting because we look at those down ballot races and we often look top of ticket to see how down ballot races will be influenced. But your point is that's the wrong way to look at it.
It's not necessarily the wrong way to look at it, but it's an indicator to me of, if I were running one of these two campaigns, of where I would think of providing additional resources. So Florida, for instance, is a pretty safe state for Trump because we have a long-term Republican incumbent U.S. Senator who has a huge money advantage, very similar to Ohio. So the Democrat there has a huge advantage. I've talked to a friend this week from Ohio, and his ads are Sherrod Jones ads are everywhere all the time, and that then may create an opening for Harris.
The emphasis on various talking points, legitimate problems in this country. I reflect on things because I think even as I mentioned problems, it's all from where you sit. And as I say, much of it's been politicized. As you look at the most effective things, because you have been involved in so many different kinds of races, and you really do have to focus when you're managing a campaign on messaging. What's been the most effective Republican message this election cycle?
I think border security is still resonating with the public because it's falling in line. More and more people are seeing the border insecurity as part of the jobs and inflation, which is leading to Biden-Harris's really horrific right track, wrong track numbers. I think the Real Clear Politics had 26% of Americans say that America's on the right track and 56% say wrong track. And to me, that's the number one polling question in any poll is right track, wrong track.
But Jamie, isn't it true that right track, wrong track and approval rating numbers in the new America, I mean, this again, now that it seems as though we've reframed the discourse with more of these rhetorical Molotov cocktails that they get thrown back and forth, the right track, wrong track game, it now will never really reach the kind of comfortable threshold that should make any incumbent feel okay.
Well, I think, maybe no incumbent should feel okay. I do think that there are, in this election, most people are baked in mostly around Trump, I think. I've also written, if you want a partisan comment, I've also written there's three stages of Harris. They are excitement, relief, and regret. And I think that's kind of where we are in the campaign, is in the relief. There was excitement when she was first nominated or first one that, was the apparent nominee. And now it's like, oh, well, at least she's not Joe Biden and at least she's not Donald Trump. And so we'll see if the regret if number one, I'm right about the regret stage. And then number two, if it happens before the election or after.
Well, it's going to be a close election, but you have to concede this. She's someone who closed the gap very quickly. Now, you're probably going to tell me, well, that was the pent-up frustration with Joe Biden and the resignation that Democrats had to him, and then all of a sudden a great outlet shows up, Kamala Harris, and that's where that goes? I'm guessing that would be your take on it.
Most polling has what we call regressed to the mean, right? So, about where Joe Biden was prior to the debate is about where Harris is today, and most of that is baked in about whether you love or hate Donald Trump.
Right. He has a ceiling, though, doesn't he, Jamie Miller?
There's no question. You know, I have friends who are big Trump fans, right? And I'm a Republican. I support Donald Trump, but you know, he needed to expand the electorate. I don't know that he's done that yet. I was hoping he would do that with his vice presidential nominee. I think there's people on the Democratic side who would have liked to see Harris expand her electorate. So both campaigns kind of did very similar things by leaning into the right and the left, which, as we were talking about beforehand, is kind of one of the problems we are facing as a nation. Why my blog is called Reasonable Arguments. Part of what I'm trying to do, I'm partisan. I'm a right of center person. I don't run from that. I don't deny that. But I'm trying to bring the discussion into, and thank you for having me on your show, into an area where people who disagree can do so civilly and with honor and with respect for one another.
As a supporter of Donald Trump and his aspirations to become president again, what do you see in him that sparks your support?
Well, for me, it is about the U.S. Supreme Court, for me personally. And anyone he appoints, in my opinion, is going to be more conservative than anyone Harris appoints. And to me, that's the ball game.
And the part of that conservative, not to interrupt, I'm sorry, but the part of that conservative judicial agenda that you're drawn to is what in general?
You know, I think it's all of it. It's certainly not the abortion issue, but I think it is more, you know, it is conservative issues along the lines of, I'm trying to think of one right this second, but we had, you know, the Dodd decision to me was a state rights issue, and I think we've gotten really far away from that. I know one of the fights that you and I could pick, I know that you're for the popular vote, and I am for the Electoral College, and it's because that, you know, the reason why we have a U.S. Senate is to represent the states' rights. And so each state has, you know, we used to elect our senators from our state legislators or legislatures, and and the House was elected from the people. And so there was a balance there. We changed that a little bit. And so I can see where people who would agree that we should go with a popular vote, but we certainly wouldn't have presidential candidates caring about rural areas if, in fact, we did that. So I like the balance of the Electoral College.
I mean, it's a disproportionate, though, imbalance, really, isn't it, Jamie? And when you have North Dakota, South Dakota with the same number of senators that California has, you can feel the same sense that you might have felt had you been in those rural regions unrepresented. You can feel that in this state of California, where we essentially don't have the voice that North Dakota and South Dakota and Wyoming have.
That's not necessarily true, because you have the votes in the House that give you that voice. And so,
yeah, but you mentioned the Senate. That's what I was talking about.
Yeah, sir. I agree with you. But when you collectively add the House and the Senate together, California outweighs, you know, these other states, and so it gives a little bit of balance. But this has been a discussion we've had since prior, when our founding fathers were still breathing, and I don't know that you and I are going to solve it today, but it's always a fun discussion. But I do believe in that balance does help give a voice to more rural states.
I'm not trying to, you know, continue to circle back around to, you know, to a throwdown here, but I really did want to, because you mentioned Supreme Court first, and this is a problematic decision, the states' rights default position that is taken. It's sadly at the cost of so many freedoms associated with being a woman in America. And I just wonder, and obviously I'm coming at it from that perspective, but I'm just wondering, a party, the Republicans, who claim to be for so many freedoms, get the government off our back, how you can be so squarely in a camp that takes away so many freedoms from women.
Yeah, for that particular decision, I don't think it's a woman's issue as much as it is, you know, if you read the decision, it doesn't take rights away from women. It gives them back to the states for the states to make the decision. And abortion is not an issue that I have throughout my career, staked a flag. That's not a hill that I've championed one way or the other. For the most part, I'm pro-life for personal and emotional reasons. And I know that very many people are pro-choice for personal and emotional reasons. And I don't believe that I'm right for my personal and emotional reasons. And someone else is wrong. But I also don't believe that they are right and I'm wrong. So,
but it sounds to me, and then I'm going to move on to another Supreme Court issue. It has nothing to do with this. But it sounds to me, if I really pressed you and we were deciding, you would say, Mark, it's fine. People should be able to do whatever they want, and the legislature and the states. In this case, when you say knocked it down to the states, it's the states' rights that you get the government, state or feds, off the back of the people and that decision.
I don't have a problem with that. One thing that I've written about in the past is that most hospitals in most states, I won't say that this is a definite, but most hospitals in most states will not give a death certificate to a fetus under the age of 20 weeks. The fetus has to gestate to 20 weeks or more to get a death certificate. And that's a long-standing, 20 weeks has been a date that's been a long-standing date in hospitals. And so to me, if we're going to quote, follow the science, I'm not sure who came up with the 20 weeks or why or whatever, but I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist. And so, that seems to be a line in the sand that everybody seemed to agree on for a very long time. And so for me, I kind of say, okay, if you're before that, that's 5 months. That should scratch most people's itch. Of course, I think you and I would be in what I like to call violent agreement that, when you start talking about the life of a mother, sometimes those problems aren't known until the 6th or 7th month. And I don't think government should be making those choices.
The other thing that the Supreme Court really has done, to me, it's been an activist court. The Chevron deference decision was, again, settled law, but just to do the reducto on it here, in essence, I think it's the beginning, and this is happening at the judicial level, and that's probably the place where it can be done most effectively in this country, especially with Congress essentially ground to a halt, inability to do anything. The dismantling of regulatory power of a lot of these various government agencies, in this case, the EPA. And I, of course, come at it from the standpoint of, well, I'm not saying that every decision that comes out of the EPA I definitely would agree with. Maybe I would, but I know that there are experts there, there's scientists there, there are trained minds to evaluate things like the purity of water, air, soil, and poisons that can be dumped into all of those things that would destroy life and create any number of problems in our society. Why not let those trained scientists and those trained minds make those decisions as opposed to a legislator? What you see on the part of the Supreme Court and the agenda that I've noticed, and you have, I'm sure as well, is an insanely business-friendly court that is pretty much allowing the regulatory structure that's held them to account for any number of issues, from consumer protections to, as I say, environmental protections. That regulatory structure is getting undone. Are you good with that?
Yeah, the pendulum swings. And so for you to say that there's definitive law that's supposed to last forever, that's not what our system is based upon. If I think you and I would also be in violent agreement that slavery was wrong and should never have happened in our country of free people. And but yet that was law. That was law from the beginning, and we changed it as it should have been changed. So, the pendulum does swing, and we're at a point today where I can agree with you also that it seems that most of our politicians are, screaming to the edges instead of embracing the middle. And I'm not sure that is good for us long term.
The screaming that the politicians do, and you as a longtime consultant and someone who's seen it unfold, it has to be kind of weird for you to see that it's really now about increasingly personal branding. You know, you get these firebrands, to use the word brand again, these sort of flamethrowers, you know,
Sure.
like Marjorie Taylor Greene, the Lauren Boeberts of the world, even Ted Cruz does a bunch of it, where, you know, they're basically just building their personal political brand as opposed to really trying to get any progress. You seem like a considered guy, and I'm wondering if that frustrates you as much as it does me.
I'm probably going to say something that you're going to think is contradictory, but when you think about it, it won't be. And you might agree with one piece and not the other. So I am somebody who believes that from very early in my career, that, you know, a politician should be able to take as much money from whoever they want as long as they report it, right? And so the Citizens United case changed that, and I think that has upended our system so that we now have a system where the infrastructure of our political parties is in decay. And I know that a lot of people, conventional wisdom would be, hey, political parties in decay is a good thing. But the problem that Citizens United has now created is that each one of the people you mentioned, and I could make a list of Democrats who are in that as well. I don't know that that's valuable to our conversation, but that they have all become a political party unto themselves. And they're not responsible to anyone except for their own personal donors who are, and it's guilty, you know, the guilt, it belongs to everybody, right? And so everybody is guilty of it. Both sides are guilty of it. And, you know, we need to, as citizens, say, you know, come up with a reasonable election reform that doesn't say, oh, let's use tax dollars to run elections, but maybe something as simple as let's do away with these third party groups, but allow if somebody wants to stand by a billionaire and take $10 million, they should, like I'm doing on your show, you know, and I'm not getting paid by anyone to be on your show, but it's you know, they should be able to stand next to that billionaire and explain to the American people or their voters why they took $10 million from that person. And now all that money is hidden. And I don't think this hidden money on both sides is beneficial to us in the long term.
Well, you're on to what I think is the whole game, but we kind of disagree on, as you predicted, on the whole game. I would absolutely get the money out of politics. I wouldn't allow these huge corporate donors or billionaires to buy the system, because, Jamie, they do get something for that donation, right? You'd agree? I mean, I'm giving $10 million to this campaign. I do expect something in return.
Yeah, you know, I don't want to. I have been a part of people who have made donations and been told no. I mean, it's not a. I don't believe either side, and I put Democrats and Republicans in the same boat because they take, each individual takes money from contradictory, you know, sources, and so when that issue comes up,
you're saying it all zeroes out.
The politician still has to look one of them in the eye, or two of them, or however many it is, in the eye, and tell them bad news. And so, you know, I'm of the belief that, you know, you're not going to take money out of politics. I just don't. It's always been there. It's you know, is it more prevalent today? Yes. The problem for me today is that it is hidden, and the public is, you know, it's hidden under great names of, you know, America is beautiful, right?
Sure.
Political committee, and so you know, or keep America beautiful, or whatever it is, you know. Right. So
it's papered over with a lot of patriotic branding.
You pass money from here to there, and you know, at the federal level, campaigns cannot coordinate with political committees, but you know, there's certainly anything that's in the public domain is in the public domain. So that's how, you know, people put polling on Twitter, you know, so
sure.
and things like that. As long as it's in the public domain, it's there. And so we have this this issue of trying to of people not really knowing who the money's coming from. And then you add into another layer of foreign millionaire and billionaires who set up American companies and funnel foreign money through American companies and I'm not saying one side does it, one doesn't. Both sides.
Oh no, absolutely. Both sides are awash in money. The whole system's awash in money.
So but that to me is a real problem when you have foreign interests affecting our domestic elections, and so
So you wouldn't want the president of the United States taking foreign money, am I right?
I don't think any politician should take foreign money.
So if there was evidence that Donald Trump took foreign money, your guy, like this $10 million, it looks like it traces back to the Egyptians, you would be, I assume that you're repulsed by that.
I am repulsed by it, but I'm also repulsed by Harris and Biden taking millions of dollars from, American companies that are controlled by foreign owners. So it's not one side or the other. I appreciate you trying to paint me into a corner. I hope I didn't stay there, but
no, you're very good. And the problem is that our system is corrupt on both sides, in my judgment.
It's equally corrupt, but
right,
it's corrupt.
Okay. Oh no, exactly. I'm not. And then it comes down to some ideology.
Corruption is the wrong word. People are. Corruption makes it sound like people are doing things that are against the law. I think both sides are working within the laws that we've written, and the public has at some level accepted. We don't show up to our legislative offices with pitchforks and torches saying, "Oh, change the campaign finance laws." Right? We get excited about other things.
On campaign financing, there's enough wiggle room for both the Democrats and Republicans to get away with a lot. I'm not. This is to be continued because I don't want. I want our first date to be really to end really well. So I do think that there was corruption and laws broken under your guys' last administration, and you may think that there are laws being broken under my guys' administration to extend Joe Biden. But
quite frankly, Mark, what I'd rather talk about are the solutions.
Sure.
Let's look forward and say, my side really wants to drag. When I go onto a conservative show, they want to drag me into election fraud, and I tell them no. I want to talk about ensuring to our children, grandchildren, and the rest of the world that we have free, fair, and transparent elections. So let's talk about that in the future, because rehashing the past doesn't help. And so I hope our next conversation is that we can build upon this and talk about solutions for the future.
Well, I'd love to do that. But in between insulting each other,
I didn't feel insulted at all. Did I insult you?
No, I'm totally teasing. Jamie Miller, again, author, American Speeches That Changed History. His Substack is Reasonable Argument. You can find him at reasonableargument.com. Well, he's pleasant enough. He has that whole Southern charm thing that comes with that Florida rural-ish background that I learned he had as growing up. You really are, you're lovely to spend some time with us. You'll always be treated civilly here, I promise. And I do look forward to another conversation as this election cycle continues. So be well, my friend.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate the opportunity.
Jamie Miller, everybody.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Welcoming all opinions on the Mark Thompson Show. Obviously, they have to be delivered with civility and not with threats, as someone in the chat was just kicked out for doing. So, but again, as that interview shows, we want to have to talk about the opinions. We can sit here and preach to the choir all day, but when you are able to talk to someone about their views and they differ from yours, that's when there's real learning happening. It is National Voter Registration Day, and I didn't want it to pass without letting you know about this website. It's called iwillvote.com. iwillvote.com. You go there, check out iwillvote.com. You can verify if you are registered, and if it shows that you are not registered, then you can use the site to register to vote. Nonpartisan site. You just select your state, and boom, there you go. See, it says there, check if I'm registered to vote. I am a resident of California. In my case, that's true, but you click the little arrow and you can select your state and figure out if you're registered. So today's the day to do that. National Voter Registration Day, iwillvote.com. Huge thank you for being here on the Mark Thompson Show. Thanks to David Cay Johnston, to Jefferson Graham, to Jamie Miller, to Mark for providing that wonderful conversation that we just saw, and to you for being here as well. The After Party Live is next. I really hope you will join me. Tony usually has the link to the show in the chat. Tomorrow on the Mark Thompson Show, John Rothman will be here. It's going to be good. Thank you, Tony. And we'll also have Belinda Weymouth with It's the Planet Stupid. And Tony, thank you for all your help today. You're awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
do what I
you're
do.
cool.
Bring up pictures. Make
Love
pictures
it,
happen.
love it. You're awesome. We'll see you again tomorrow on the Mark Thompson Show. Hope it's a great day for you guys. And please join me on the After Party Live. No politics. We'll talk about science and some other interesting things next on the After Party. And even if you're not going to stay, please come click subscribe. I think we're at 2,300 subscribers and counting. So thank you for the clicks.
I'm Shadler Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
As Mama says, bye-bye, everybody. Have a great day. Thanks, Tony.
See you next week.
Bye.
Opposite tomorrow.